If you're new to the home buying process and considering purchasing here in Tucson, you've come to the right video. I'm going to be breaking down step by step what it's like to work with us here at the Stratton Real Estate Group and cover everything from A to Z so you know exactly what to expect. So we're going to talk about when to speak with an agent, when to talk with a lender, how to get pre-qualified, what the inspection process looks like, what happens when you go into escrow, and then all the way to the exciting part of getting the keys. Be sure you watch this video all the way to the end, because if you miss any of the steps, it can cause an unwanted surprise, which can easily kill a deal. Buying a home should feel exciting and not stressful. So the purpose of this video is to make sure that you understand everything so there's no surprises, and that allows you to stay in control throughout the process. This video will apply to you whether you're a first-time buyer or you've purchased before. You have to keep in mind things change, processes change, and strategies change, so it's really important to stay up to date with exactly what's happening in the market today. First, let's talk about what you actually get when you hire the Stratton Group. Residential real estate is all we do, and we guide hundreds of families a year throughout this process. When you work with us, you get 24-hour access to every home for sale, both on our website and on our mobile app. You also get expert negotiation, detailed contracts handled correctly, and direct access to our network of trusted lenders, escrow officers, and inspectors. One of the biggest values is that we communicate constantly. We stay in contact with the lender and the title company the entire time, as well as the agent on the other side of the transaction, in order to make sure that the process is really smooth and your transaction stays intact. This is a team effort, and with us, you get the entire team behind you instead of just one agent. So when you work with us, your agent is going to always be your main point of contact, but everyone else on the team is going to work behind the scenes in order to make the process really smooth and feel really good for you. To get the buying process started, let's talk about the very first step that is needed. So step number one is going to be to talk to a lender. You want to know exactly how much home you can afford, because we don't want you to get into a monthly payment that's uncomfortable for you. So talking to a lender doesn't lock you into anything. It just makes sure that we're on the same page when it comes to the right price point for you. When you talk to a lender, they're going to get you pre-qualified for the loan. So that tells us what loan program is going to be best for you, and it also strengthens your negotiating power when it comes to writing a contract. So once you're pre-qualified for the loan, now it's time to meet with us. And when you meet with one of our agents, we're going to be talking about your needs, your must-haves, your timelines, and your deal breakers. Now let's unpack those a little bit further. So your needs comes down to what size of a home do you need, and if there's a specific location that you want to be in. Those are two of the most important ones. Your must-haves are things that you absolutely can't live without. So for example, maybe you have a mother-in-law or somebody that's staying with you and you need a separate space with them. That would be considered a must-have. So everyone's must-haves are a little bit different, but some people need things like a big backyard if they have dogs, or maybe they have to have a pool, or maybe they're elderly and they only want a single-story house. Some people even will only choose a house if it has a gas stove instead of an electric stove. So whatever your needs are, those are the things that we want to know. So your deal breakers are things that you really can't change. So one of the biggest examples of a deal breaker is the location. Obviously, you can't change the location of a house. So sometimes that's a part of town, or sometimes that's maybe if the house is up against a busy street and you don't want that because of children or noise, things like that. That could be a deal breaker. The next one's the timeline. So maybe you have a lease that you need to fulfill, or you have a specific time that you need to transition. So those are things that we need to know. So an advantage of working with the Stratton Group is that if you do have a lease, we actually have a program where we will help you get out of your lease. We'll pay up to $5,000 to help you end your lease if you choose to buy a new construction home with us. So if that's something that applies to you, definitely reach out and let us take care of that for you. So going through all these pieces when we meet with you, make sure that we're in full alignment. We can definitely help you find the right house. This also helps us establish commitment. And one of the ways that we secure that commitment is the document called a buyer broker agreement. So this agreement outlines how we get compensated. And the good part for you is that typically we get our compensation from the seller. So that's definitely something that we'll discuss at that appointment. And it also outlines how long we've agreed to work with each other. And we only get compensated when the house closes. So you're not having to pay anything for our services up front. So one thing to keep in mind is we do have a guarantee with our services. So at any time, if you choose to cancel with us, or you feel that we're not doing something that we've promised you to do, you can cancel without any fees. Once we've established this partnership, now is the part that most buyers like the most, which is looking at homes. Since we have a lot of agents on our team, we often know about houses before they even hit the market, so it's definitely an advantage of working with a large team like ours. So to look at homes, we set you up on a search based on the criteria that you've told us is important to you. So we take into account all those must-haves and those deal breakers to make sure that we're sending you the houses that you might like the most. So you get to look at houses both on our website and on our mobile app. If you want to download our mobile app, which is really helpful as you drive around Tucson, you can download it in the link below. So once you come across houses that you want to see, then we'll schedule an appointment. So you're gonna let the agent know which homes you want to see, and then we'll put them in order in a route that's going to save you the most amount of time possible. We always recommend that you first drive past all of the houses, because you'll be able to eliminate some just based on what part of the street they're located on, or sometimes what's behind the house, maybe an alley, or again, a busy street, something like that. So driving past the houses will definitely save you time. And in order to get into the houses, you definitely need an agent so we can unlock the doors for you and get you inside. Once we find the home you love, we'll review everything together. Comps, strategy, potential repair items that you might be concerned about, and exactly what's needed in order to get your offer accepted in today's market. So once we've discussed all of that, now it's time to actually write the offer. So that's when the experience and our negotiation strategies and the relationships that we've built over the years with other agents in Tucson really is important to choose a team like ours, because we drastically increase the chances that your offer is going to get accepted. So let's break down negotiations. One of the things that's really important that we do is we always call the listing agent of the home that you're choosing to purchase to make sure that we have established a really good relationship with them, and that we also know exactly what's important to the seller. We always want to make an offer a win-win situation. So we want you to win as the buyer, and we also want the seller to feel like they're winning. So things like maybe there's a specific date that the seller needs to close. That would be an easy thing to help us negotiate and make it a win-win for the seller, but also help you get the home that you want. So making sure that we work with that listing agent is really important. So other things that we negotiate is closing costs. So some buyers need all of their closing costs covered by the seller. So what that does for you as the buyer is it allows you to get into a home with less money out of pocket, which is a good thing. So closing costs vary a little bit based on the type of loan that you're getting and on the purchase price, but somewhere around $6,500 to $7,500 is typically enough to get those costs covered for you. Some buyers want a little extra closing costs from the seller so that they can use those funds to buy down the interest rate, which makes your house more affordable with a lower monthly payment. So whatever is important to you, those are the things that we use to negotiate in the contract to help you get the best deal possible. So this is also a time when our compensation comes into play. So when we write the offer, we go back to that commitment that we signed, the buyer broker agreement that we stated our fees, and now we put those fees into the offer. So our goal is to always get our fees paid by the seller so that there's no out-of-pocket cost for you. So a couple things that the sellers could counter. Obviously, they could counter the price. They can also counter the concessions or the closing costs that they're agreeing to give to you as the buyer. And they could also counter the closing date if they want to close a little bit sooner or a little bit later. One of the other items that sometimes they counter is who pays the HOA fees if the house that you're purchasing is in an HOA. So if we get a counter offer from a seller, then we're going to sit with you and review all of the terms that they've countered and see what works for you. So then you could accept that counter offer, or maybe we need to counter again. So once we get to an agreement on the price and all the other terms that have maybe gone back and forth with the counter offer, then we get acceptance and we move into the escrow process. So a lot of people ask, what is an escrow officer and what is the escrow process? So the escrow company is basically a neutral third party. So they're the ones that handle the fees, the closing documents. They kind of coordinate between both the buyer and the seller in order to make sure that all the legal documents are handled and nobody's on one side. They don't favor the buyer, they don't favor the seller. They're just neutral to help close the transaction. So we'll stay in communication with the escrow officer every week to make sure that your transaction stays in line. And one thing that they will send to you as the buyer to complete is called an escrow opening package. So you will want to watch out for your email. That's all done electronically, really simple. And you just fill it out and send it back to the title company. One thing that's really important that I always like to warn buyers about is there's a lot of fraud going on right now. So no matter what comes from the escrow company, if they ever ask you to wire money or anybody asks you to wire money throughout the whole process, that's a huge red flag. So don't wire any money. The only time any funds are ever exchanged is at the very end, and the escrow company will give you those wiring instructions directly. So you just want to make sure that you're protected. So the first thing you're going to do with the escrow company is you're going to deposit the earnest money. So the earnest money amount is determined in the offer. It's typically about 1% of the purchase price, but that can be countered sometimes. So once we have the exact amount of the earnest money, you're going to give that money to the title company. And that's basically your good faith telling the seller that you're going to proceed throughout the closing process and actually close the transaction. So keep in mind throughout the process, there are a few contingencies in the contract, which if you canceled based on one of those contingencies, you'll get that earnest money back. The only time that the seller gets that earnest money is if you just change your mind and you decide to cancel the contract sometime down the road and it's not due to any of those contingencies. The other thing to keep in mind with the earnest money is that money will go towards your closing costs or your down payment. So the 3 contingencies that are built into the contract are an inspection contingency, an appraisal contingency, and a loan contingency, and we'll break all those 3 down in just a second. The inspection period starts the day after an offer gets accepted. That's day 1. So typically the inspection period lasts for 10 days, and throughout those 10 days, that's your time to research everything you want to know about the property. We have a vendor list full of inspectors for any kind of inspection that you want. So typically we recommend a general home inspection, and that checks out the house from head to toe, everything you want to know. We also recommend a roof inspection and a termite inspection and a plumbing inspection. That's where they use a scope to go into the plumbing lines and make sure that there's no blockages or roots or anything like that. Other inspections that some buyers choose to do would maybe be a mold inspection. And since we're in Arizona, an HVAC inspection is definitely recommended. This is also the time if you want to research anything with an HOA, you can review the CC&Rs and make sure if you have things like maybe you have a trailer or some kind of toys that you want to be able to park outside, you want to make sure that you review the CC&Rs and make sure that there's not going to be any issues. Other things that buyers choose to research during the inspection period would be things like maybe the crime statistics, or if you're concerned about any building permits, things like that. We have resources and websites that you can go to and we'll help you with any of that. We have a document called a buyer advisory, and we'll put a link to that below in the captions. That gives you access to every website that you can possibly imagine when it comes to researching a house. Once you decide which inspections you want, we'll get those scheduled for you. We try to get as many scheduled the same day as possible to save you time. And by the end of your 10-day inspection period, we have the opportunity to ask for repairs. So our recommendation is always to find the most expensive repairs. We don't really want to give the seller small, inexpensive items to choose from. We want them to choose only items that are really important to you. So typically focusing on the roof, HVAC, and plumbing and electrical, those are the big ones, and anything that might be a safety hazard. So once we decide what items are important to you, we'll write up a response and we'll ask the seller to fix those items. So keep in mind, the seller doesn't have to fix those items. They'll respond. They have 5 days to review your request and decide how they want to respond. So maybe they'll do all of the repairs that we've requested, maybe they won't do any of the repairs, or maybe they'll counter and say that they're going to do a couple of them. Once we get your response, then you have 5 days to decide. Are you okay with their response and you want to proceed? Or are you not okay with it and you can choose to cancel the contract? Since that is one of the contingencies in the contract, you do get your earnest money back at that point if you do choose to cancel during your inspection period. So throughout the inspection period, that's really a time when it's beneficial to you to work with an experienced team like ours, because there really are some strong negotiation skills that need to take place. So once we've made it past the inspection period and we know what repairs the seller is going to do or not do and you're okay proceeding, then we start with the appraisal. So the appraisal is another contingency in the contract where if the house doesn't appraise for the price that we're in contract for, you do have the ability to cancel, and again, you would get your earnest money back if you chose to cancel due to the appraisal. So the appraiser's role is to confirm the value and make sure that you're not overpaying for a house. So keep in mind, a lender is not going to give a loan for more than the property is worth. So if the appraisal happens to come in lower than the purchase price that we're in contract for, then our negotiation skills have to kick in again. So that's, again, when you want to work with an experienced team such as ourselves. So we need to go back to the seller then and negotiate to either try to get them to drop the price to the appraised value, or the other option is that you could pay the difference between the appraised value and the purchase price But keep in mind that would have to be paid in cash. A lender is not going to give you a loan for more than what they're being told the house is worth. So that might sound confusing, but don't worry, we'll handle the process from start to finish. And we'll communicate with the lender and the appraiser during this time and make it easy for you. So during the appraisal process, your role is mainly going to just be working with the lender to finish the loan. So what to expect during that time is the lender and the underwriter, they're going to be reaching out to you for more updated loan documents. So they're going to ask for things like pay stubs, W-2s, tax returns, things like that. And after you provide them, don't be surprised if they come back and they ask for more. Don't be alarmed, that's totally normal. They're gonna keep getting documents over and over pretty much all the way until the house closes. So our goal is to get clear to close from the lender. So once they've verified all of your income and they feel confident that they have everything that they need in order to close the loan for you, that's when we get something called clear to close, and that's a good day. That's when we celebrate. So one thing to keep in mind, that third contingency that we talked about that allows you to get out of the contract and still get your earnest money back is if something comes up with your loan. So let's say during the process of buying the house, maybe you lose your job or something happens that keeps you from qualifying. If we do have to cancel due to not being able to qualify for the loan, you do get that earnest money back. So an important note to mention real quick, but while we're still talking about the loan process, is be very careful with your credit during this time. The lender is going to do a final credit check. So do not go buy a car while you're getting a home loan. Don't go lease furniture or lease anything that pulls your credit. You don't want to do any of that because it can definitely make your loan fall through, and then we would lose the house. So once we get clear to close and right before the actual closing happens, we're going to go back to the property and do what's called a final walkthrough. So that's when we go and we make sure that there's been no damage to the house, no vandalism, and any repairs that the seller has agreed to do have actually been completed. So your agent will make sure that we get copies of invoices to make sure the repairs are done and they're paid for, and then we can go back out to the house and just verify everything before closing. Okay, now comes to time to sign the papers. So 2 things that you need to take with you when you go to your appointment with the escrow officer to sign your closing papers are ID and your funds that are needed to close. So either the escrow officer or the lender will give you the amount due out of pocket before your closing appointment, so you'll need to take those funds with you. The most common way that people like to pay that is typically a cashier's check. So keep in mind when you go to this appointment, it's going to be a long one. You're going to have lots of papers to sign. So probably schedule about an hour for that appointment. Okay, at this point, you're getting really close to getting your keys. So after you sign all your documents, those documents have to go back to the lender for final approval. So they're going to go through the documents, make sure you didn't miss any signatures, make sure all the I's are dotted and T's are crossed. And once they've approved everything, then they'll let the escrow officer know that we're good to go and they can record with the county. So in Pima County, we record electronically. So that's all handled by the escrow company. So they'll record it with the county. They'll call your agent, let you know that it closed, and then we can call you and schedule a time to give you the keys. So a lot of buyers ask us, how long does this take from the time we write an offer until it closes? So a lender typically likes about 45 days, so it's not too rushed to do the loan. However, it could be done if needed in about as short as 30 days. So somewhere between 30 and 45 days is typically the most common. It can go a little bit longer if needed, but that's the most common. Another question that buyers ask is why work with Stratton Group? So one of the things that I really like to make sure that people understand is that we have a lot of experience. So there's always some sort of surprise that comes up throughout a transaction. So with our experience, we've closed over 2,500 homes. So with our experience, we're really familiar with pretty much any surprise that could come up. That means that we know how to solve it and hold your transaction together, which is extremely important. One of the other reasons a lot of buyers choose to work with us is that we're really committed to helping our community. So we do have several community programs that I would like to point out real quick. So I mentioned the program that is called our Step Out program, where we help renters get out of leases if that applies to you. We also have a program for teachers. So if an educator or somebody that's even just a friend or family member that gets referred to us from an educator buys or sells a home with us, then we donate $1,000 to a classroom of their choice. So that's a fun one. We also have a first responder program where any first responder buys or sells a house with us. We pay for either their home inspection or $500 towards their closing costs. And because giving back to our community really is the core of who we are, we also have a cancer foundation that we support. So we have the Stratton Ovarian Cancer Foundation, where we cover mortgage payments for women who are battling ovarian cancer. We do have a fun video that you could check out that's a little recap of our last fundraiser, where we raised money for women who are battling cancer. So be sure to go check that out. We really are big believers that the Tucson community is who provides us the opportunity for our careers. So that's why we created these community programs. We love being connected with the community. We love being connected with buyers and sellers, and we really like to bring those together. So if you're thinking about buying a home in Tucson, whether it's the first time or you're re-entering the market, we would love to be part of the process and guide you through it. I hope this video helped you understand the whole process from start to finish of buying a home, and also what it's like to work with us here at the Stratton Group. So be sure to like this video and subscribe, and we would love it if you would share it with a friend who might be considering buying here in the Tucson area. All of our contact information is in the description below, so please feel free to reach out if you need any help at all with the buying process here in Tucson. We would love to work with you, and we'll see you on the next video.